Number 8, issuance of final waivers of lien should happen at A, at substantial completion, B, at the point of final completion, C, there is no such thing as a final waiver of lien, D, at the monthly payout review. Okay, so first of all, waivers of lien. Waivers of lien, the lien is referring to a mechanics lien, which doesn't have anything to do with mechanics. It's just the sort of an old-timey term. And the mechanics lien is any time somebody feels that they haven't been compensated appropriately in a timely manner. So let's say that example we were looking at before where there was the plumber line item and they should really be paid $45,000 or $47,500 or whatever. And instead you give them $2,000. Like they're going to look at that and say, well, no, we're way more into this than that. Like, you know, this should be up in the 40s. This doesn't, like, there could be a little bit of argument about whether you're actually at 50% or not, but it couldn't possibly be that far wrong. And then maybe it goes on, and they never get that extra money. It's just they keep working, but nobody's paying them. So what do? What's the plumber supposed to do in that situation? Well, what they do, and I'm using plumbers, architects do this as well, but using the plumber as just an example, what they do is they file a legal document, which is a lien, a mechanics lien, on the property. So it's about the construction, but they're putting it onto the property. And they're saying, you know, we're owed $48,000 or whatever the number is. And so we are claiming $48,000 of ownership of the property. And until we're owed that, until we're paid that, you know, we're going to have this mechanics lien on the property. So what that means is it's writing with the deed. And so therefore, if the company is trying to get a loan, if they're going to try to sell the building, if there's any official thing that's going to happen to that site, that building, all the official players are going to say, well, wait a minute, we can't sell this building. There's a lien on it, or we can't give you a loan until you get your lien worked out. So it's a way for the small players to be able to make sure they're getting a fair shake. So you put a mechanics lien on a building. So what this means, though, is, of course, that all the owners and the funders and everybody are very nervous that they're going to pay everybody out, but then somebody's going to make a claim later and say, no, actually, we think we're owed more money, so we're going to put a lien on the building. And then even though you're in the right as the owner and as the architect going through this, you still have to go through the problem, and it's a big legal mess, and they might be doing it just as a way to kind of get a few more bucks out of it. And so you're just trying to kind of keep it clean. So the way that you do that is as you are handing out the checks, so this would be the GC, the owner would be handing the checks, the big check to the GC would be handing the smaller sub checks to all the subs, and everybody's getting paid out. Each of those people, when you hand them the check, they then hand you a waiver of lien. And what they're saying is, okay, I've got the check up to the amount that I'm owed, and I'm waiving my right to put a lien onto this project because you've paid me. And so it's a significant process of especially bigger buildings, like especially government-funded type buildings. You know, in a small project, doing a single-family house or something, the waivers of lien, that kind of thing, maybe it shows up, maybe it doesn't. It's relatively simple and easy to do with only a few players. But for, you know, a great big project, a high-rise, or like I said, a high school for 1,000 students or something, there are lots of subs. There's a lot of checks going out every month. Trying to keep track of that is a big deal. It's not something that the architect does. It's something that the contractor has to make sure all of those waivers are ready. Otherwise, the owner is not going to give them the check. But the architect gets involved often, partly because they're also being paid, so they have to sign a waiver of lien, but also because you're trying to help that process. So you're trying to help everybody get everything ready so that payout on that monthly timeline or bi-monthly or whatever it is can happen smoothly. So it seems like a tiny little thing, but it's actually a giant thing. So when does it happen? Well, the final waiver of lien means, all right, this isn't just along the process. I give a waiver of lien when it's, we're on month 3 of month 12 of the 12-month process, I give a waiver of lien. But at the final, when I get all of my money, it's a final waiver of lien that can only happen at the point of final completion.
So this is an interesting one. You did hear Mike, where again you're emphasizing a specific word, a key word here.
Yeah.
So just something for you guys to look for, because again, when they're writing these questions, they're putting these extra words in there that totally change the meaning of what the answer could be.
Yeah.
So this is a really important. This is a great example of how to evaluate a question. Make sure you're capturing all the words that are framing the idea here.
And as an example, D would be the correct answer if the word final wasn't in the question.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Because at every payout review, there's going to be waivers of lien. Now, like I said, not every project does a waivers of lien. If you're a smaller project, it's kind of a paperworky thing, and banks aren't really going to care if this is a $60,000 overall construction budget or something. But you're doing something that's $5 or $8 million or even bigger, you better believe there's going to be waivers of lien, because nobody wants to delay that project because somebody didn't do the paperwork.
And just to kind of emphasize something I think you mentioned earlier, that it's the contractor, not the architect, who is issuing this final waiver of lien. So don't be confused about that. The architect is not issuing the final waiver of lien, but the contractor is.
Yeah, well, just to be clear, the architect is also getting paid. And so you also have to produce a waiver of lien for yourself. So you actually will produce your own final waiver of lien, and that has to do with your fees. It doesn't have anything to do with anybody else's fees. It's just, okay, we're at the end of the project. We are not going to put a lien on your building because we've been paid, and it's not just a monthly pay. We're completely done. It's final, so we're done. So it's a tiny one compared to what you're really usually talking about for when you say final waiver of lien, you would immediately think of the GC doing this, and that means that everything is now done. The contract is essentially ended. There are aspects of the contract that go past the final completion, warranties and things like that. But essentially, the contract is now done, and that final waiver of lien is that moment where you say, okay, I've got the check, you've got the final waiver of lien, we're done. But everybody will produce their own version of the final waiver of lien. The one that counts is the one that the GC produces, because that's the big one.
Mm-hmm.